So today we're going to look at the route to registration for SACPCMP for both construction project managers, construction managers, and I will touch on RPL. So this is this will cover all the avenues of registration with SACPCMP. There is quite a lot of reading required in terms of your preparation, particularly for the interview, okay? And so I've listed the acts that are important and that you need to be aware of, and we'll go through them. We'll go through the registration process. As I said, we'll go through the recognition of prior learning and the requirements of that as well. I will briefly describe the SACPCMP have currently in place what they've called a special dispensation, which expires on the 27th of July 2027. What this does, essentially for CMs and CPMs, you require an NQF8 qualification. What the special dispensation, which is your honors degree. What the special dispensation allows for is for those with BTECs or BEng, which are NQF7, allows them to register. They will be granted, if they get through the process successfully, they will be granted professional registration, and then they will be required to do courses, and they will be evaluated. That has not yet been finalized by SACPCMP, so I cannot share any details. But if you get asked in your submission process to accept a special dispensation, go online and accept it. All right, and we'll deal with what's required when SACPCMP sort their lives out. All right, so that's the agenda. All right, so here's a bit of background, just some historic stuff for you. Essentially, the SACPCMP came out of and under the Department of Labour. So SACPCMP report into the Council for the Built Environment, who in turn report into the Department of Labour. And that is the same with all the councils, EXA, SACAP, etc. Okay, so to facilitate this, there was a number of acts that were promulgated, and these are them. And basically, it ensures that SACPCMP operates and is governed within a predefined requirement, as are the other professional councils. Maybe just to let you know that SACPCMP is controlled or governed by the president and the council. They then appoint the staff, such as the registrar. So the governing body of SACPCMP is in fact the president of the SACPCMP and the council. So this is just a further bit of background, which I'm not going to get into, which you can read when you get the presentation. So the SACPCMP was established to regulate and promote specific built environment management professions. And they talk about this juristic person, and that is the person registered with the with the SACPCMP. So its mandate is to provide for registration of professionals, candidates, and specified categories in the project management and construction management professions. So that's what it does, and that's what this presentation is about. The Council is further tasked with the protection of public interest, which is achieved by ensuring suitably qualified and registered professionals in the specific built environment management professions in South Africa through promoting and enforcing high standards of professional ethics and conduct within the built environment. Let me just emphasize, you must know as with EXA, you must know the SACPCMP Code of Conduct. And just to let you know, we have over the last year, we've had a couple of people who've been brought before the council, and a couple, one or two cases have been just their membership and professional registration has been cancelled. So you need to make sure that you adhere to the code of conduct requirements. All right, so the key questions, particularly for CMs and CPMs. In the last few years, have you been acting in a construction management or project management role, independent of an engineering role? And I emphasize that because it is very, very important when you're preparing your documents to make sure that you stress the project management and construction management aspects of your experience. SACPCMP do not want to know about your design experience. So I had a CV just this past week where the guy applying is ex-registered, and of course he starts talking about his engineering role and the drawings he produced and the designs he did. Not relevant, and in fact, I would think, and in fact it does, it causes the assessors to wonder if the applicant is really in a project or construction management role. So that's the first question. You need to answer that question. Then, do you want to be a construction project manager or a construction manager? And if the answer to those questions, those two questions, is yes, then we continue. All right. So here's the categories of registration as we sit at the moment. You've got your mentors, you've got your health and safety category, you've got your building inspector category, and then you've got obviously the construction and project management section where you've got your candidates. And then so you've got your candidate construction project manager and your candidate construction manager. I'm not going to be talking about health and safety, okay? Not my forte, and I'm not going to be talking about the building inspectors either, okay? All right, so that's where we are. So here's just an overview of the registration process. All right, so you will apply for registration, for professional registration. So there's a couple of scenarios. One is you're accredited without the relevant experience. In other words, you've got your qualification, which is an NQF8. Let's call it for the moment NQF8 qualification. And then you just need to gain experience. You can register as a candidate, and then you submit annual logbooks. And at a point in time, you feel you're ready for registration. You will then submit your documents for assessment, and then if you get through the assessment, you will go to professional interview, and if you get through that, you will then be registered. So then you get a non-accredited qualification with or without the relevant experience. So this is now where one of the changes come in. So if you have got a qualification but it's not accredited, you will actually have to go into the RPL category here. All right, the recognition of prior learning. So if you've got anything less than an NQF 8, okay, then you will need to go into the recognition of prior learning, unless SACPCMP have a rethink. But that's the status of play at the moment. All right, and you need a minimum of 7 years as a CM, and if I recall correctly, 10 years as a construction project manager if you want to register for RPL. Okay. And obviously, once you have registered, there is a very strict and stringent, as with any of the councils, CPD requirement. So right, let's look at the roles of the construction manager first of all. Focuses on the construction processes, ensuring the building meets time, standards, and budget. Oversees the daily site activities, manages subcontractors, ensures safety and quality, cost and time are all met. And this is the key. They're involved in stages 4 to 6, and we'll discuss those stages shortly. So stages 4 to 6. The construction project manager oversees the entire project. He is responsible for managing the delivery of the project in terms of the objectives that the client has set for the project. And that is stages 1 to 6. So construction manager, stages 4, which is tender, construction, and closeout. And the construction project manager is initiation, feasibility study, detailed design, procurement or tender, construction, and closeout. So, right. So here's the stages, and you need to know these stages, guys. Please do not. I have people who are involved with Transnet who use FEL or other organizations where they use a different set of descriptions for the project development stages. You must know the stages as detailed by SACPCMP, which are these. Okay, so you need to know the 6 stages and you need to know the names. Then there are 10 knowledge areas and their associated deliverables. These include things like risk management, scope management, time management, etc., etc. And these are managed within the framework of the project stages. Okay, so in addition to just acting as a project construction manager or a construction manager, if you're going to apply for construction project management, you also need to fulfill the role of a principal consultant who manages the design team and their deliverables. And then you need to also have managed the construction contract on behalf of the employer. So in the case of JBCC, this would be the principal agent. If you're using GCC, it would be the employer's agent. Or if you're working with older versions, it would have been the engineer. FIDIC is the engineer, and then NEC is the project manager. So you'll need to have the competencies. So once you have done all of that, you'll need to make sure that you can demonstrate the competencies and experience identified in the identification of work for a CM or a CPM detailed in Act 48 of 2000. This is the professional construction manager. Now you'll notice I did say that they're involved from stages 4, 5, and 6. However, I believe that they have a very important role to play in the design review process. So in some cases where construction managers are working independently, they very often get involved in stage 3 as part of the design, development, constructability, health and safety assessment, normally together with the health and safety agent. Okay, they have to know the 10 knowledge areas. A construction manager manages the requirements of the construction of the project, and as I said, can be involved from stage 3, but is generally focused on stages 4, 5, and 6. And then again, the competencies for the construction manager are detailed in the Act 48 of 2000. All right, so these are the acceptable qualifications here. So you'll notice if you're going to do construction project management, the minimum is an NQF level 8 qualification. And they've indicated what is acceptable here. All right. Just to note that all foreign applicants will need to get a SACPCMP approved certificate and accreditation. Now, there is an error on the slide, and I apologize. The construction manager is also required to have an NQF level 8, not an NQF level 7. Again, construction manager, NQF level 8, as with the construction project manager. Okay, so here are the things that need to be fulfilled by registered candidates. If you decide to go the candidate route, you will need to submit logbooks, yearly or annually, need to work under the supervision of a mentor, and it's useful to have a mentorship agreement between yourself and your mentor that will be signed by you and the mentor. And the reason for this, one, is to just acknowledge that you are being mentored, but also for the mentor to submit as part of his CPD requirement. The mentor must be registered with SACPCMP in the category the candidate is registered in. This can be a little bit problematic because there's not a lot of, particularly CMs for registered candidates, registered professionals in construction management. So here's some of the challenges and some of the reason why candidates very often get their candidature cancelled. Failure to submit logbooks annually. Difficulties in securing the services of a mentor. So I'm going to suggest that before you register as a candidate, ensure that you have a mentor. Okay? And then lack of adequate support from the employer to provide you with the infrastructure, software, systems, whatever else you need. Okay? So that can be problematic, and that becomes very evident when you do your logbook. Process of candidature. I just want to spend a little bit of time just going over RPL. And let me just say, for those going through the RPL process, I'm full of admiration for you because it's a fairly arduous process. It takes a lot longer than just straight professional registration. So here's the process flow. You will submit a CV in the RPL format, and it gets submitted for eligibility. So assessors will look at it. You'll submit this eligibility application. It will be assessed by an assessor, and they will say, yep, the applicant has the necessary experience to proceed with the RPL process. So once the application is approved, the applicant produces a portfolio evidence, which is submitted for assessment. And once the assessment of the PO is approved, you will attend an oral assessment. Now, let me just say it. So the current purpose of the portfolio of evidence is to give you what they call a qualification equivalent. So when you prepare your portfolio of evidence, there are certain qualification equivalents that SACPCMP have put in place. You will have to respond to one of those qualification equivalents when you have finished your POE, and if it's approved, you will get a certificate from SACPCMP, which is only valid for SACPCMP, that will give you a qualification equivalent. Okay, so you will then, and that will happen after your oral assessment. Once you've passed your oral assessment, you'll be given a qualification equivalent, and you will then go through the professional registration process. You have to prepare the documents which will need to be assessed. You will go for a professional registration interview, and once you get through all of that, you will get your registration. All right, so just again, apologies for construction managers. You need an NQF level 8 qualification, or this RPL qualification certificate that I've mentioned down the bottom. And the construction manager, similarly, if you're going to apply for construction manager, those are the qualifications as we've mentioned previously. So at the moment, I did mention that until 27th of July next year, 2027, there's a special dispensation in place, all right? If that will allow you to apply for registration with an NQF7 equivalent qualification, which is what applies here. So, if you've got an NQF, a BTech, or a BEng, you can, or an equivalent architectural degree, etc. You can, or a quantity surveying degree, you can apply, but there may be specific requirements once you've registered that you will need to fulfill. Okay. Right, so these are some of the core knowledge requirements, and I'll go through this when we talk about the interview a little bit later. But these are some of the knowledge areas that you require to be aware of, and a lot of you will be aware of them. A lot of them are part of what they call the 10 knowledge areas. So you just need to make sure that you are knowledgeable in each of these what they call knowledge areas. All right, so if you had an NQF7 qualification, post-registration, these are some of the courses that they may want you to go through or fulfill. But as I say, it hasn't been finalized at the moment. It's still in progress. So here's the registration process. Okay, so let's look at the construction manager and the construction project manager. So you complete your application and you create a profile on the SACPCMP website. Okay, so you go on, go in for professional registration, either as a CM or CPM, and you'll create your profile. You will then get an invoice, okay, from SACPCMP, which you need to pay in order for them to process and set up your profile. Okay, once you have set up your profile, you're then going to prepare and upload the following documents: a CV, a project profile, an eligibility assessment report, all of which have to be on their templates and have to be done online. So let me just say something here, that generally what I encourage applicants to do is to prepare, I call it a hard copy of their CV, project profile, and eligibility assessment report. And then when you go online to fill it in, it's just a cut and paste exercise. You need to submit certified copies of your CPD certificates, your membership of a voluntary association, and qualifications. In addition, your qualification needs to be verified. This is your primary, tertiary qualification, needs to be verified and NQF validated. In other words, they want to know, did you get the degree and what is the NQF level of that degree? They may also require a logbook, and generally that'll be a wait and see. I want to say that not always submitted and not always asked for. Okay, once the assessment is complete and approved, the applicant will be invited for a professional interview. Okay, and let me just talk a little bit about, let me go back and talk a little bit about the interview. The interview is based on, for the CM, 3 what they call functional questions and 9 behavioral questions. So they will generally ask you one question, and they're predetermined questions from the behavioral, from the functional questions, and one question from each of the behavioral items. So that will be the format of the interview. There are follow-up questions, but that would come as you do your preparation for the professional interview. And that'll apply to the CM and CPM, although CPM have, let's call it, 4 functional questions and 8 behavioral questions. So the purpose of the questions is to just ensure that you have the relevant experience. So the assessors will be looking for you to demonstrate experience and give actual examples when you're answering the questions. So these are some of the templates. I'm not going to go through all of them. Let me just open up the CV here. So this is the format of the CV, the template. All right. Your qualifications, your short courses, and your memberships of EXO or SACPCMP or whatever else you've done of what we call voluntary associations or other entities. And then you have to demonstrate your experience. I just want to spend a little bit of time going over this. So current employment, all the details, and then in the space, there's opportunity for you to detail the experience that you've been through with each employment period. My suggestion to you is that when you are demonstrating this experience, if you're doing for a CM, you demonstrate your experience in 4, 5, and 6. If you're doing construction project management, you demonstrate your experience in stages 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So it makes it easy for the assessor to identify what experience you've had. All right, so very, very important. Then you've got the project profile. So the CV is the first document. Then you've got the project profile. All right, and this is all your personal information. Then ideally what you want to submit is 4 projects completed in the last 4 years. So 4 projects completed in the last 4 years. They may have started before the 4 years, but obviously they need to have been completed within the last 4 years. And giving all the details. And at this, when you're talking about your role here, ideally you'd mention if you were doing construction management, it would either be an 8.1 or an 8.2. So you'd specify construction manager, appointment 8.1, using FIDIC, JBCC, or whatever contract you were using. Useful for the assessor then to understand that you're aware of the contractual implications on projects and that you fulfill the role of a construction manager. If you are a construction project manager, you'd put here candidate construction project manager or construction project manager plus acting as the principal consultant if you were to manage the design team, and also the principal agent or equivalent managing the construction contract on behalf of the client. Okay, so that's, and then obviously a summary of your experience of what you delivered in each of these stages. Very similar to your CV. Now, it's accepted that for CPMs, you might not have had stages 1 to 6 on all the projects, but you need to demonstrate that you have had stages 1 to 6 involvement in the projects. And obviously for your CMs, it'll be stages 4, 5, and 6. So that is the project profile. We've been through the CV and the project profile. And then here's the eligibility assessment. And again, your personal details. And then what you have to do in this section, you need to demonstrate your understanding of the knowledge areas. Okay, these are the 10 knowledge areas. So under the successes, you need to demonstrate how you have successfully delivered the deliverables of integration management on a project. So generally what I suggest you do is underneath where it says 3,000 words, underneath there, just describe the project briefly: scope, cost, duration, and your role. Okay, so then you describe how you delivered the deliverables of each knowledge area. And then under failures, what they want to know is that you have had problems, and we all have problems on our projects, is to detail the problem you had on that particular knowledge area, how you mitigated it or dealt with it, and then what lessons you learned, so that obviously on the next project you don't make the same make the same mistakes or have the same problems. So that is, and then, as I mentioned earlier, you need to get your qualifications validated by an entity such as MEI. There are others. We've used MEI quite extensively. And these are the documents that you need to read. I'm not going to, well, in fact, we'll come to them shortly. There's a number of documents that you need to read in preparation for the interview, and for the preparation of your documents. The first one, there's a lot of detail. Act 48 of 2000. This provides you with, firstly, the governance structure for SACPCMP, and secondly, provides you with the competency requirements for you as a CM or CPM, which you need to demonstrate in your documents. So we've gone through a whole lot of detail, which I'm not going to go through now, but it will be available on the presentation. Just giving you an overview of what Act 48 of 2000 contains. Generally at the interview, the first question will be, have you read Act 48 of 2000? So you need to read it. And then, sorry, let me go through this. There's a few acts and then Act 43 of 2000, which provides details, again, of competencies of the CM and CPM. And then 38 of 2000. Now, this is the act that governs the CIDB, okay, the Construction Industry Development Board, okay, which is where the contractors have to register. And now professionals are also going to be required to register with them as well. And then you've got Act 85 of 93, which is the Occupational Health and Safety Act. Very, very important. Let me just stress this. Very, very important for construction managers to be aware of this one and the construction regs, to know them like you know the back of your hand, all right? So CPMs need to know them, but CMs particularly need to know the detail. So that's 85 of 1993. And there's just one more act that I wanted to go through, which is So here's the construction regulations. CM, CPM need to know them. They were promulgated in 2014. There were amendments in 2017 and 2019. The 2024 construction regulations have been issued in draft for comment. They have not yet been promulgated. However, I would suggest that if you're intending to register this year or beyond, you need to be aware of the 2024 construction regulations. As I said, they've been issued in draft. So this is just some of the details and the amendments that you need to be aware of. And there's three parties mentioned in the construction regs: the client, the contractor, and the designer. So that is the construction regs. And as I said, please be aware of these things, okay, as you go into your preparation. So we've been through all the templates that need to be completed. And as I say, this is some of the reading that you need to do: the construction regs, Act 38, 43, and 48 of 2000, the identification of work, which is contained within Act 43 and 48. And also, please make sure you read and know the SACPCMP Code of Conduct. All right, so this is just some of the reading which I've been through already as you prepare for your professional interview. Know your knowledge areas and know the deliverables. Understand the appointments of the OSH Act. And let me just say, when you go for an interview, you need to be aware of your own appointment as a CPM or as a as a CM, whether it's an 8.1, a 16.2, you need to be aware of that. You need to be aware of the contents of the health and safety file, and that doesn't matter whether you're a CM or a CPM. We've talked about the principal consultant, the principal agent role. Be aware of the construction and consultancy contracts used in South Africa. Okay, obviously we know about the construction, NEC, FIDIC, JBCC or GCC, and then obviously you've got a number of consultancy contracts, including JBCC, FIDIC have their own, NEC have their own, Proxa has their own. Okay, just be aware of those, and you will need to know your contract that you use predominantly on the projects you're working on. Here are the 10 knowledge areas with their deliverables, just for information. 10 of them, and each of them underneath it has the primary deliverables of each knowledge area. And then just to emphasize, post-registration, you will be required to fulfill CPD requirements in a number of categories on a 3-year cycle. So yeah, the moment you get registered, your CPD cycle will start, and you need to fulfill the CPD requirements. Otherwise, your registration could be suspended or will be suspended. All right, there are submissions windows. You can only submit for registration in the windows that are dictated by SACPCMP. Unfortunately, they haven't yet issued the submission windows for 2026. The first window is likely to be on the 1st of April, and the windows are generally open for a period of 4 to 6 weeks. But they are available on the SACPCMP website when they're issued. Thank you. That brings us to the end of the presentation, which I trust you found useful. And please feel free to ask Johan any questions that you may have, and we can certainly address them.